Hey everybody, welcome to Church History for Chumps. This is Johnny the Jet, bringing it to you live. We've got the mayor of Keto Town, Taylor Treadway.
I'm in ketosis.
And we've got Tommy Treadlocks with a mouthful of popcorn. Tommy?
Yeah, dude. I'm just here eating this popcorn since Taylor's in ketosis. Actually, Taylor, you were just telling us that you said ketosis is for the birds. I'm on Ozempic.
I wish I could afford Ozempic.
Ozempic, that's that rich boy drug, man.
It seems like
it's like
works.
It's like hundreds of dollars a month, though, isn't it?
Yeah. It's.
I thought you could get it at Kroger in California.
I don't know.
That's faux Zempic, and it might turn your skin green.
No, it's fentanyl.
That's called fentanyl.
Yeah, that's what you can buy at Kroger.
Does the same thing to your body.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you'll lose a ton of weight.
I had a friend who, this is gonna sound crazy, but he would just casually do meth. And I feel like I know who this is. And I love this guy, and he admits he was dancing with the devil. He admits it. The Lord spared him from diving off, but he would do meth on the weekends.
Yeah.
And he's like
microdosing meth.
And he's like, I would just hit at my dealer on Friday, buy just enough for to get through the weekend, and then hit work again on Monday. And he was like, my house was so clean.
That is a crazy way to live your life.
Oh,
yeah, no,
sure.
Really.
We're not recommending it. It's just
yeah, of course.
It's just an interesting anecdote.
Anecdote.
Oh,
that is, God. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I can
held against my will to record at 10:30 at night here. I can mispronounce.
Oh, whatever. It's 8:30 in California.
That's not okay. Thanks. Wow, thanks, Simon. I feel better.
Here's the thing, dude. Time is just an idea. If I told you it was 8:30, you wouldn't know that it wasn't.
I know.
Yeah, time is just, it's whatever, dude. Might as well be 5 in the afternoon.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere. Not for Baptists.
It's 5 o'clock. Dude, I would, you should go into marketing and make a shirt that says it's 5 o'clock nowhere. And then says, I'm a Baptist on the bottom.
Yeah. Sponsored by NAM.
Sponsored by Baptists Against Drunk Drivers.
Dude, bad. Oh, that's good.
Dude, that kills. Yeah, that would be some great branding.
Bad.
Gosh.
And that's all we're going to sing of that song.
We used up all of our good banter for the last episode, so I think we're just going to jump into the meat and potatoes. How's that sound, boys?
Let's do it.
I can't have potatoes.
You can't have potatoes.
Oh, man. Sorry for that cough.
No, you're good. You're good. All right, team. Okay. We're going to talk about Origen today. And, man, I got super bummed out reading about Origen. I have a bunch of strong feelings that I don't think I'm informed enough to really substantiate. So I'll probably wait till the end of the episode when I have nothing else to say, and then I'll start sharing all of my unsubstantiated opinions. But let's just say I really feel for our boy Origen. We're going to call him O for the rest of the show.
Big O.
Also, Big O, man. Yeah. Yeah. Before Ozempic, Origen.
That's right. Dude, Ewan's going to be so psyched when it says Banter ends at 4 minutes.
Yeah, seriously. All right. So the great irony. Oh, also I should say this too. The last episode you guys heard was probably either our bonus episode or the one on Constantine. We've actually realized that as we've done our early church series, we did a lousy job of covering half of the early church. So we've been kind of running it back. We've been hitting early 3rd century. We'll be hitting into some of the 2nd century as well. So I apologize for the lack of continuity, but
Can
just
I make a little comment on that?
Hit me. Yeah.
I think that we have a natural tendency to do that because we understand that the work of the church is linear. So we'll we'll talk about something and then we immediately want to talk about like what happened.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, it's like when you listen to a rap album and you hear a feature that you really like, and so then you listen to that guy's album and then you hear another feature that you like. It's just this branching tree that just spreads so wide. Exactly.
Yeah. The goal is to backfill, and then we'll probably do a series on the fall of Rome, and then the season will end, right?
Sure.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe we just keep going.
We could just, we could just be in season 3 forever.
It might never end.
Point is, when you get fall of Rome, then you'll know, okay, we're moving forward.
Right. Or moving backwards. Who knows? All right. Let's get to just everything I can do to contradict Taylor. Yeah, all right. Let's talk about Origen. Okay. Origen is a dude who kind of filled my heart with sadness, and we'll get into that. So the great irony of Origen's name is that at a young age, he too would be provided with an origin story. Did you guys just hear my air conditioner turn on?
We sure did. Yeah. That Arizona heat.
Yeah, brother. I'm going to go turn it off real quick. I'll be right back.
Pause.
We'll,
You're on Mark.
There we go. Mark.
I kind of like this as content.
Yeah, just leave it in.
Yeah, it's just you munching on popcorn, me rambling incoherently. Dude, I got the SBC annual convention coming up.
Are you going?
I am. I'm going as a representative, and I'm working for the school.
Oh.
You're a messenger?
I am a messenger.
Let's go.
All right, you boys ready?
Yeah.
Let's run that back. All right. The great irony of Origen's name is that at a young age, he would be provided with an origin story. Like the death of Uncle Ben that transformed Peter Parker into Spider-Man, or the parental murders of a young Bruce Wayne that morphed him into the brooding Batman, heroes often have a story that shapes the kind of person that they strive to become. Modern minds may call it a breaking point. Others may call it trauma. Honestly, it's probably just trauma. But hey, all things can be redeemed by the great Redeemer. It was the dawn of the 3rd century, around the year 202 AD. Origen was a teenager. He had a privileged upbringing with a quality education, and although he had been given a pagan name in Origen Adamantius, which is a solid freaking name,
dude,
I'm telling you, yeah, the original freaking adamantium. He also had Christian parents. And Origen had already begun to learn under the tutelage of a man named Clement, who is a figure that we will definitely be covering very soon because he's a very important guy. A widely influential figure and soon to be revered church father. During this time, Origen's father, a man by the name of Leonidas, dude, just good names flowing like water out of this family, bro. Widely known and respected as an influential man of the church. Life was bountiful and the family was relishing God's blessings. But unknown to them, a storm was brewing in Rome. Emperor Septimius Severus had just issued an edict.
It's always the Severuses, dude.
Oh, it's only sometimes the Severuses. I mean, sometimes it's like Severus Snape, right? Harry Potter. But the Severans were kind of an ineffective dynasty in Roman history. And this guy, he has a very kind of milquetoast persecution of Christians. It's not going to be like a top 5 persecution.
Just commit to something, Sevi.
Like, we will whip you with pool noodles.
Yeah, with like Twizzlers. I don't know. We want to make the point, but we don't want to be a bummer about it. Well, he's going to issue an edict that was not going to last long, that Christians who practiced openly were to be executed. This was in Alexandria, which is, of course, a big, pretty famous Christian spot.
They have a library, right?
They sure did. And this wave of persecution was sporadic and short-lived and would pale in comparisons to the other seasons of persecution for the early church. But this, however, would not soften the blow that is about to come to Origen's family. Because one night, at the home of Origen's family, where he lived with his parents, they would be abruptly entered by Roman soldiers, and Leonidas would be seized and taken away. Origen, who was just 17 years old at the time, was filled with intense desperation. He would rather go away with his father to be martyred as well than acknowledge his father's fate to death. But his mother frantically begged him to stay, reminding him that to be taken away is martyrdom, but to surrender yourself is suicide. And she urged the boy to take the more virtuous and Christ-honoring route. What'd you say, Tommy?
So that was some quick thinking on mom's part.
Dude, the story and tradition is even more kind of funny, which is that because they had all been awakened, he when Origen woke up and saw his dad getting dragged out, he didn't have any clothes on. I think he was like just wearing, I don't know, whatever underwear was in the year 202. He had his skivvies, his chonies, and
underwear,
and he looked for his clothes to put on, and so his mom like hid all of his clothes, and that's how she kept him from running after him, because he was too modest.
I like how he's like, I will die, but I will not be naked.
He's like, I'm not gonna go out like that, bro. I'm not gonna do it. And so he relents, and he his dad is taken off to be martyred. He will be executed, and this will ignite in Origen this intense fire to suffer a noble martyr's death that would never be extinguished. And this does kind of become the, like I said, the pun intended, origin story of our boy O. So
this is so intense compared to every other person we've talked about.
Dude, Origen's life is so freaking compelling to me. Like there's a lot of lives where you can kind of tell they had to embellish some details, but I think Origen's life is so fascinating, and it's only going up from here, gang. He'll strap in, seatbelts on.
You heard him. Strap.
My microphone was
nope, wasn't the microphone. But I want you to know. Nope, don't touch it, Ray. I'm hooked though. So you've got
strap on. Gosh dang it!
So much suspense if the guy. No, dude, that was epic. I was like, locked in.
What's he gonna say? Hey, I'll tell all the listeners out there. Never start a podcast with your high school bullies, bro. Gosh dang.
You were my college bully.
Actually, just kidding. Thomas's only high school bullies were his siblings.
Yeah, and you were my college bully.
All right, back on Origen, Taylor.
Oh, he's ignoring those accusations. He doesn't want to.
That's not true. That's not true.
Was I your college bully?
We were each other's college bullies, but we didn't like each other.
No, that's the time.
All right, Origen. Okay, so the family is now dealing with this incredible traumatic loss. Their father, who was a well-respected, well-beloved Christian leader, had just been seized and taken away. And as a result, also, his family's possessions were confiscated by the state as further punishment for their Christian activities. And so Origen, who was only 17 at the time, now has the task of doing whatever he can to support his family. But one thing about Origen that was interesting was that he was, even at this incredibly young age, considered like a genius, like a incredibly smart dude. And so he takes up a teaching job, teaching the Greek classics, which he's like an expert in, even though he's, still a teenager, to provide for his family. And also Clement, who was this highly respected teacher who had been kind of mentoring him, kind of he kind of vacated the area when the threat of persecution came by. So that's an interesting thing, because a few months later, this whole persecution, like I said, is going to completely die out. It's not going to go anywhere. And the Bishop of Alexandria, a guy named Demetrius, who is going to be a very, very interesting dude in this story, he's going to want to reopen the catechetical school that Clement led before he fled off to Asia Minor somewhere. And so he hears about this 17-year-old prodigy who's just teaching the classics like some seasoned veteran of the trade, and he says, you know what, let's bring in this kid and we'll see if he wants to lead the school. And what's cool is that this school wasn't just, when you think like, catechesis, you're thinking Christian doctrine and learning the Bible, and it was all of those things, but this was also because, again, like Taylor said, Alexandria is this place with a rich library. It's very classical. There's lots of literature. And so in this school, Origen is overseeing the teaching of philosophy and mathematics and astronomy on top of doctrine and the Bible and things like that.
Answer me this. So did Severus just like have too much Jack one night and was like, hey, go kill Christians? And then why is the school allowed to be open later?
I've read a couple I read a couple different takes on this. One is that maybe he was just throwing persecution as like one of a few solutions at the wall to see what stuck, and this one apparently didn't. One is that because he's in Rome, and most of the persecutions before Decius are going to be very localized, and so it's more likely that he had communicated some form of persecution against Christians. Whoever was overseeing Alexandria decided to enforce that for a time, and then kind of pulled back. So it was just a bad place to be. Like this wasn't a widespread brutal persecution. It was like a few months maybe.
It's probably I mean, I have no knowledge of this specific circumstance, but it is historically true that it's easiest to persecute like individuals and the poor, and those who are a little bit more institutionally protected sometimes are safer. So I wonder if that could be part of it.
Yeah. But I mean, when you look at Septimius Severus and the stuff he did as an emperor, like this little season of persecution is barely a blip on what he did. He was trying to kind of restabilize. He was a big military man. He was the first of a dynasty. Like this was not really something he cared about that much, but there was precedent for persecution of Christians prior to him. And later on in Origen's life, it's definitely going to kick off once again. So Origen is going to accept, and he's going to take on the intimidating task of becoming this like headmaster overseeing this school. And he's going to be there for about 10 years. And as he does this, he's going to continue to study, and he's going to start writing. And he is going to apply his deep knowledge of the Greek classics and of Greek philosophy. And he's going to apply a lot of that to understanding just the vast expanse of scripture. He's going to write a long series of homilies on the Gospels and on the book of Genesis. And he's going to coin a lot of terms that we'll get into in a little bit. But the big thing right now is that his reputation is going to spread like wildfire. He's going to be known as kind of this, this little young prodigy who, this student of Clement who's kind of set ablaze the church in Alexandria. He's just this really sharp dude. And so he's eventually going to be invited to different churches across the Roman Empire by churches to kind of resolve disputes and to talk theology and to give lectures. And this is going to lead to the first moment of controversy in his career, because a church in Palestine is going to invite Origen to preach. And he's going to lead the divine liturgy at one of their masses, which is a very questionable thing to do because our boy was not ordained. And I don't quite know the logistics of like
this is
kind
like
of
when Calvary churches have Charlie Kirk come preach on Sundays.
Oh man, that's such a good comparison.
Well, he was like Origen was he was still a theologian. Like he was still really sharp.
So is Charlie
but
Kirk.
yes, he did not have okay, chill out. But yeah, he didn't have the credentials. And I don't know how like jurisdiction really plays in, because what's going to happen is the Bishop of Alexandria, Demetrius, the one who gave Origen his job, is going to find out about this, and he's going to be like, yo, you can't do this. You're not an ordained priest. And he's like enraged. And this was an interesting thing because the bishops in Palestine, specifically the Bishop of Jerusalem, they were like, well, that's fine. You can do this. This is not a problem. But Origen was an Alexandrian Christian who needed to submit to his bishop. And so he kind of has to go home with his tail between his legs, like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. This is also kind of where things start to come up, because there's a lot of historical record that Demetrius and Origen just don't like each other. There are testimonies that we see specifically from like these Palestinian churches that Demetrius was just a jealous guy, that he just didn't like the attention that Origen was getting. And again, there's a lot of things in Origen's story that are hard to confirm, but there's some interesting narratives we can pull. But like I said, he's going to go back to Alexandria after this. He's going to, sorry about the whole, breaking the rules, whatever. And he's going to start writing, and he's going to write like a madman. And this is one of the things that Origen is most known for. He would write like crazy. I read a story where he was writing so much that he hired a scribe to basically help pen his thoughts as he was just like thinking out loud and doing all of his like processing of ideas and stuff. And his scribe was so overwhelmed within a couple of days that he quit the job. And so he hired another scribe, and eventually he needed 15 scribes working for him at the same time just to keep track of all the crazy ideas this dude was just thinking through.
What is it about? That's really fascinating to me. Like, I think it's because I'm not that way.
Yeah, dude. Like, Thomas, I'm in the same boat. I was just thinking, like, what if I had scribes? I'm like, I don't need scribes. I just voice to chat, dictate to Siri, and she's gonna be like, this isn't worth writing down.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave this off the record, big dog.
Right.
So that's probably a sign that this guy is like what we would think of as like a super genius.
I think, the word genius was thrown around in so many books that I read about him. Like I would even go as far as say like a savant. Like he's like, he knows his stuff, and he worked so freaking hard. Like Saint Jerome is going to report that he knew of collections of Origen's books that numbered somewhere between 800 and 2,000, and these are all individual books that he wrote during his time, which is just crazy. But you think this is his job, and soon enough he's going to leave his work as kind of this headmaster role, and he's just going to be writing and continuing to kind of consult and talk theology with churches and things like that. He is really significant because he is the first theologian who would ever compile a systematic theology, like a basically like a compilation of understanding how we see God and the ideas behind self, sin, Christ, all the big ideas that form the Christian faith. And it's called De Principiis, or On First Principles. And I think that is one of his few books that we can actually still access today. Origen is going to be credited with coining a number of terms in Greek that will become very, very relevant, especially in how they describe Christ's divine nature and the Holy Trinity, such as the term ousia, which is for being, the term physis for nature. He terms theanthropos, which is the God-man, the phrase used for Jesus and his divine human natures, and homoousios, which is a very, very important phrase for combating the Arians pretty soon.
Yeah.
Wow. And is the idea of being Christ being consubstantial in his oneness with the Father. He's also known for being a guy of very upstanding character. Like he just has a really glowing reputation to, I guess, everyone except for Demetrius, depending. So he's going to get into this. He's just going to write like crazy. Over a decade passes after his first trip to Palestine. The churches reach out to Origen again, and they say, hey, we need a little bit of help with this. He travels out to see him. He's like, no problem. And they're like, hey, we kind of got you in trouble for this last time, but could you lead the divine liturgy for us again? And he's like, no, Demetrius is going to give me a hard time if I do. I'm not trying to get in trouble. And they said, well, here's the thing. Your whole thing is that you're not ordained, so we can just ordain you. You've got good theology, you've got good upstanding moral character. Let's just ordain you in a jiff and you'll be fine. So he ordains him, or they ordain him. He preaches again, and then Demetrius finds out, and Demetrius once again blows his top. Does he blow his top because he's a man of principle or because he has a secret hatred of Origen? We don't really know, because that was a long time ago and nobody wrote that down. But this time, Demetrius says, well, Origen can't be ordained because Origen is a eunuch. And Origen, in all of his moral piety at a young age, chose to eunuch himself, which means that he removed his sexual organs by choice to maintain celibacy. And at that point in history, eunuchs were not permitted to be ordained as priests, which was very interesting to me because I did not know about that. So Origen's ordination was reversed, and he was once again scolded by Demetrius. And Origen decides, you know what, screw it. I'm not going back to Alexandria. I'm sick of dealing with this dude. I'm going to go to Caesarea, and he's going to go to Caesarea and stay there for the rest of his life, mostly.
It sounds like Demetrius is almost like the equivalent of like that senior pastor that's like telling the youth pastor, "You're not ready, son." The youth pastor's like, "But I got a call, chief." And he's like, "You're not ready, son."
He's like, every other church in the world literally thinks that I'm like really pastoral and I would love to be ordained. And he's like, nah, son.
He's like, they don't know you like I do.
Like, I don't want to just be Team Origen here, but I could see that narrative of Demetrius being kind of the fragile senior pastor who's really afraid of the youth pastor getting too big and having to share the spotlight a little bit. Dude, but again, that's all.
I mean, if he really was a genius, I mean, this is a really, I can like totally see this playing out in a modern context, in any church government structure too. I mean, like for Taylor, like this would be like if Taylor had like, there's this guy in his church who's just an absolute, like, 148 IQ, just absolutely like blitzes every conversation ever, and they're like, we just can't make this guy a pastor. Like it's not going to be a good thing. And then he goes like one town over, and he comes back next Sunday, and he's like, so they ordained me.
Yeah, that could honestly be a part of it. I mean, I don't know. There is a lot of controversy around like what his beef really was with Origen, because the thing is, like, Origen wasn't looking to be a priest anywhere. He wasn't looking for authority. He wasn't looking to challenge Demetrius as a bishop. He was very content to just write and explore Christian doctrine and things like that. So you really do have to wonder. Preacher. Yeah, he's a traveling man. He wants to travel.
He's Pulpit Supply.
Dude, we love Pulpit Supply. Come on.
Well, Demetrius doesn't.
You haven't got into it yet.
Yeah,
but I know that some of Origen's views are historically seen as a little theologically sketchy. Is there any evidence that Demetrius ever pointed to those things, or was he just like,
"Oh, bro, you don't 100%, yes"? Okay. And so that's
he wasn't he wasn't only playing the you got no game card.
Right. Yeah, there was also, and I think this was after the kind of blitz ordination, when Demetrius is like, oh, and by the way, it's not just that he's a eunuch, he's also a heretic because he teaches this idea. And we'll get more into anakatastasis in a little bit because
that makes a little bit more sense to me.
Yeah. And again, it becomes problematic because we don't know for sure if this was even a view that was being advocated for. And so like the argument of, was Demetrius just a petty, kind of slanderous dude doesn't really go away because there's not a ton of evidence. So I don't know, but we'll get into that. I'll get into some of the cool things that Origen contributed, and then we'll get into some of the sketchy things too. He was a big advocate for the typological understanding of scripture, which, as a covenant theologian, I'm a big fan of because it basically reads scripture through the lens of the revealing truth of Christ. And so oftentimes it will, it's kind of notorious for over allegorizing or saying, oh, well, this is a symbol for this. But really, I think at its core, it's this idea of looking at the themes that we see throughout the Old Testament and just seeing how well they are pointing out and foreshadowing Christ and Christ's work.
Taylor, this is like your boy Spurgeon.
I am not prepared to talk about typology at 11 o'clock at night.
So right. Spurgeon's sermons just read like this, where like it'll be like, and the bush in Gilead was Christ all the time.
Okay, so you're forcing it.
Over allegorize.
Look,
yeah.
I tend to be, we're all very ecumenical here. I think we have generous spirits, and I think that's a good thing. I am not going to preach that way, but I tend to think if you're saying truth, then go for it. I don't care if you got to your truth in a logically wrong way. I'm not going to do that. But like Augustine, over allegorized like everything. And it was the standard practice for a lot of the church. And I'm now just learning this it seems like Origen might have been.
He was very influential in this. Yeah. Here's the thing. Like you can definitely over typologize, if that's a saying. Like, not every bush, tree, shrub, plant, animal is some crazy thing. Sometimes a thing is just a thing. But I mean, there's obvious typologies that I think are even referenced in the New Testament. Like, I mean, if you read through the book of Hebrews, it typologizes all kinds of things, from the role of the high priest to the temple sacrifices and things like that. So it is important. Well, one of the typologies that Origen was a really big fan of was probably the most famous one, which is Abraham going to sacrifice his son, and then the angel appearing and saying, "Hold on, spare your son. This is not the time." And then, of course, a lot of theologians from a typological standpoint would say, well, this is a reference to Jesus, because Jesus is the son who would not be spared, the lamb who would be slain, and the immortal son who would shed his blood for the children of Abraham, which is a really beautiful depiction. Yeah. So, but yeah, he's going to bring a lot of rich understanding to Christian theology. However, in 249, the plague of Cyprian is going to break out in the empire, which is going to lead to the worst persecution in the 3rd century under the Emperor Decius, which is going to bring this violent wave that will far surpass what happens under Septimius.
First off, one thing, they just named stuff so much cooler back then. What was the name of the plague?
Cyprian. The plague of Cyprian.
Yeah, we get COVID-19.
Yeah, doesn't sound as good.
No, anyway, I'm just rolling my eyes at like a plague. Of course, it's the Christians' fault.
100%, dude. Yeah, they were like, maybe the reason is because the Christians aren't sacrificing animals.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So in this time, persecution's gonna suck, and this is, there's quite a few things about the story of Origen that I bemoan, but this part is just brutal. So Origen is going to be arrested and held in captivity for 2 whole years, and here's the thing. The people holding him captive are very aware that Origen has a a reputation. At this point, Origen's in his mid to late 60s. So he's known as this older, very well trusted, very beloved Christian man who, who just has a lot of influence. And so it makes me think, honestly, of Polycarp, even though he's a couple decades younger, because his martyrdom would just affect a ton of people. And so they kind of get it in their minds, these evil Romans, like, oh, well, we can't kill him because he's like a hero of the faith already. If we kill him, it's going to bolster them. What we need to do is we need to torture him until he recants, because once he recants, that'll be a huge win for us. And so they hold him prisoner, torment this poor old man, and refuse to kill him. And then eventually Decius, the emperor who instituted this persecution, will die in battle. The order of persecution will be undone. Origen will be released from prison, but being in his late 60s and having endured all types of awful, awful torment, he would not last much longer. He would die of his injuries. And because dude, it sucks. And because, I think the Catholic Church specifically has terminology for this. If you die as a witness to the faith, we think of all the typical Justin Martyr, Polycarp, you're considered a martyr. But if you die as a result of torments or pain received for the faith, you're a confessor. And, I don't think that Origen's glory in heaven will be any more diminished because of the difference in titles, but knowing that chasing the glory of martyrdom had become such a longing for him after the trauma of seeing his dad be killed. It just sucks, man. I mean, that is really just that to me is such a gripping example of just how freaking evil Rome was capable of being at this time, that they would refuse to kill an old Christian man. I don't know. Yeah, that just messes with me.
I don't know, man. We've talked about so many people and had so many stories on the show, and this one just hits so sad.
Yeah. Well, buckle in, man. Buckle in.
What? It gets worse?
Well, here's the thing, dude. So, Origen was what some people consider a speculative theologian. And so he wrote a ton, and he was so familiar with Greek philosophy, specifically Platonism, that while he has a ton of really, really rich and sound ideas, he's also going to advocate for some ideas that historically are not going to age well. And again, it's important to recognize at this time in history, the path of orthodoxy is a road that hadn't quite been blazed yet. And so a lot of the founding theologians, especially someone with so much output like Origen, since he was throwing so much stuff at the wall, some of it was not going to stick. And some of these things were, he's going to argue that the human soul existed before life began. Very Platonist idea.
Mormon.
Proto-Mormon, man. He will be criticized for a view that seems to be controversial, not that if it was true, because it's very untrue, but it's controversial if he stood by it, which is the view that he believed that all of existence, including Satan and the demons, would be one day redeemed and reconciled to God. And so he has, there's a couple of his views that almost seem like
universalist.
I wouldn't even go, I would go farther than that. It almost sounds like a version of, holy crap. I'm spacing because it's 11 o'clock. What's it called when you die and you come back to life as a plant or something? Yeah, like a version of reincarnation. I freaking swear, dude, you're such a bully. But here's the thing that really bums me out about Origen is that because the historians writing about his life are going to write 70 years after his lifetime, because the most influential, authoritative figure in his life, at the very least, has a kind of feud with him. Whether it's bitter or justified is unclear. A lot of the controversy around Origen is not even certain. Like, we don't know if Origen truly was a eunuch. That is not confirmed historically. We don't know if he taught. We do believe that his teachings led to the formation of this view of universal salvation, like the certainty of universal salvation.
So 70 years after his death, that puts us like right at Constantine too.
Yeah, because it was Eusebius, and Eusebius was Constantine's historian also. Yeah. And so the bummer is, like, there is a lot of uncertainty. And so what's going to happen is, several hundred years after the fact, you're going to get a Christian heresy of Origenists who are going to take some of Origen's ideas, specifically about universal salvation, and they're going to kind of amp them up to the nth degree, and then kind of separate from the church as a result of it. And so Justinian I, who is the Eastern emperor at the time, is going to say, well, this is a heresy. We have to get down to the bottom of it. And Origen is kind of seen as the foundation of all of this junk. And so
what year would this have been?
Oh, shoot. Maybe 7th or 8th century. I'm totally guessing.
So, dude, he's getting slammed 500 years after. Oh, this guy can't catch a break.
This is in the 500s. Just
500s. Okay, yeah. So 6th century.
Still, dude.
So as a result, most of Origen's literature is going to be destroyed, which is why he wrote like 800 books, and right now we have a couple books and a handful of homilies that can be connected with him. And, you know, much like Tertullian, who is someone we covered a few weeks ago, he is this figure who has this incredible historical and theological legacy in the church. He's considered one of the most relevant and significant church fathers, but he's never given the title of saint because of the controversy around. And the bummer is that because now we have no knowledge of what he believed, and because even what was written about him was potentially biased by some of his political rivals, we don't even know if he was an outright advocate of these things.
So, couple thoughts.
Yeah.
So one, if what they're saying is true about him, this is why you have to be really careful when you start theologizing outside of Scripture. Mm-hmm. So that, throw a little bone to all our biblical studies people that don't like the theology very much. Yes, I understand. You got to do it within Scripture. But secondly, I am inclined, I have to look this up and talk to some people smarter than us. I'm inclined to believe that maybe they're onto something if they burned everything. Because they don't, like, why would they just start tarnishing this guy hundreds of years before them for no reason? Maybe people were misunderstanding Origen, but I'm inclined to believe that maybe they were actually onto something.
The bummer, though, is that when you look at specifically the Cappadocian Fathers, so Basil the Great and the Gregories, they were very, very influenced by Origen's writings. Okay. And a lot of their theological distinctives are actually going to come from essentially what Origen had started with.
And so they're solid. Those are solid.
And they're they're like the fathers of the Eastern Church. Right. They're like very high up there. And so I'm probably being a little bit too lax saying we don't know if Origen said these things. I think that Origen definitely probably went too far. Like I said, I think speculative theology is a good term for it. I do think he overmixed Greek philosophy and understanding theology. He shot too far and he kind of got himself mixed up for it. But
I think it's possible that both things could be true, that he was really important at the time in church history. He was like a foundation that other men were able to build on, yet his works maybe shouldn't be in the hands of all the generations of the church. And I'm thinking specifically of Athanasius, when he wrote on the Incarnation, he was like 21 years old. Like just unbelievable that he wrote that at that age. But I read somewhere one time that Athanasius had a bunch of books that he didn't publish, and he specifically said that he didn't publish them because he wasn't fully certain that he was right on some stuff. And he basically was like, what if I'm wrong? What damage could be done to future generations of the church if I got some of these things wrong? So when you look at someone like Origen, I think of like, I don't know, there's a few people in church history and even modern theologians who are so prolific, and you kind of wonder, like, I mean, nobody can bat 1,000, right? And the more you write, the more errors you're bound to have. This is kind of how I feel about Aquinas. Like, Aquinas has so much good stuff in there, but he also wrote an unbelievable amount of theology, and he gets it really wrong on numerous counts. And so I could see, I think I'm kind of Team Taylor on, like, maybe this is a good thing. Like, if he really messed up in the midst of kind of like these manic states where he's got 15 scholars writing down what he's saying, like maybe there was some real stinkers in there.
Yeah. I mean, I do think there is I think I kind of lean into the likelihood that the decision to destroy most of his library was probably pretty reactive, and there's more that could have been preserved from it. Just because of the amounts of influence that he had. And I mean, like, I get it. I mean, when heresies start to pop up, you want to cut the snake's head off, you know.
Yeah.
You want to get right to the source.
Stuff burned again?
Ah, shoot. This was, like I said, this was
century.
Probably this stuff. I thought it was 6th century. Yeah.
I mean, dude, so I can't help but relate this to, like, all the German thinkers of, like, the 20th century. They just like all jumped into speculative theology. And honestly, the stuff that they were doing is what led to a lot of the apostasy that we see today. Like, directly influences, and that you can trace it back to, like, these guys' PhD students that they taught, like, then went into insert this denomination that's now heretical, this denomination that's now heretical. So I don't know, man.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think I agree more than I disagree. I do. I think that there is room in the church for speculative theology, because at a certain point the church had to be speculative, just because, you know, God didn't hand the Nicene Creed off to the apostles. Like, I think there is a good thing about speculating. I think there should always be safety parameters around it. I think it should always submit to a higher authority, first to the scriptures, but then of course to, like, the actual church. But yeah, I don't know. I think speculative theology is kind of enticing. I think it kind of shows that we believe that the Spirit is still alive and well. I definitely think it's dangerous, but I also think it could be dangerous to never speculate too. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm thinking off the cuff.
So you're describing two different things here. So we have this like young hothead that has 15 scribes around him as he rambles, versus like, hey, we're going to have a council that gets together with Dr. So-and-so, the equivalent, right? Like I know we're trying to take these stories and make them understandable for us in our modern context. So like when the Chicago Statement in the 70s of inerrancy in the 70s was signed, like they just grabbed PhDs from like every area of evangelicalism and had them get together and like process, well, okay, what does it mean for the scriptures to be inerrant? And then they all come together and say, all right, yeah, let's draft this statement. We're all going to sign this in agreement. And now we have something. That's what you are like describing favorably. And I don't think that's what was happening with Origen. From what you've said, from what you've taught.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but it also goes to show, like, how was this guy's literature, like, like edifying the church for 300 years before it was deemed heretical. You know, isn't that kind of gives me pause.
I mean, that is pretty interesting.
It is. It's tough one. I'm gonna do some further research on this.
Yeah, the story of Origen, I certainly think inspires a lot more research because
the book burning makes a lot less sense like post church councils. If you said, oh, they burned all his stuff in the 200s, then it would be like, maybe that was the best way they could think of to protect the church. But by the 6th century, I mean, like they had a really good rhythm of getting together to kind of put bad ideas to death by talking about it. And so that definitely, now I'm Team John.
Yeah, okay. And now I'm Team John, as I'm about to say Tertullian stuff is around.
Yeah.
And like he was straight up an apostate. So I don't.
Man. Well, I just found a whole page online called the Origenist Crises. So maybe we do a part 2 on this.
I think next episode, dear listeners, I think next episode is part 2. So we're gonna be done recording here in a little bit. I think we'll like pause, go do more research, and come back because this is fascinating.
Yeah, this is interesting stuff. So yeah, I'm down to keep this going because I do think that there is a lot of value in protecting the church from heresies. I don't know. I sympathize with our boy, and maybe that's just me being a romantic. But I want this guy's story to be
dude,
redeemable.
Like, it's a horrible story, and then like the fact that all he wanted in life was to be a martyr. I mean,
just like his daddy.
Yeah, and then
it's rough.
You know, we talked about the nature of martyrdom a few episodes back and what counts.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually talked with our professor of missions while we were out in Africa together. And I brought that up. And he actually had a really good answer for what counts as martyrdom.
What did he say?
So he and you got to remember this, he knows people that have been martyred. He knows people that have been killed. He has had dear friends killed for their faith. And there is a very fine line between being killed, like the young man we talked about who went to the Sentinelese tribe.
Mm-hmm.
He was killed because he would have been killed whether he was a Christian or not. And so that's the distinctive.
Dang.
So I bring that up. So like there's people that are quote unquote martyred because they're white in a very dangerous part of the world. That's why they're killed. They're not killed because they're Christian. They would have been killed for anything. So I think Origen, we can put a bow on this and say our boy was martyred. I think he, despite what the Catholic Church says, I think he was martyred. He died because he was a Christian.
Yeah.
Maybe. Never mind. I can't make that joke because I would get too many text messages. Never mind.
Good self-control. You know, self-control is a fruit of the spirit, Thomas. And it's actually a qualification for being a pastor.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thanks, bro. All right. Well, I love that. And that's a good closer. And I got to chew on that because the whole idea of someone being martyred. Yeah, that story, anyway, that's also going to be an episode. Maybe we'll drop that sometime this summer about John Chow and his maybe martyrdom, maybe not. Yeah, interesting stuff. All right, well, my head's full of ideas, but my head's also really tired, so I'm going to go to bed.
You sleepers,
yeah.
Simon? Oh, man.
Alrighty,
Tommy
boys.
looks like he's going to pass out. I've got my second win, so I'm all giddy and like giggly.
I'm at like 1.5 wind, but my second's gonna push me right into the bed. So, all right, team. All right, we love you guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Buckle up.
Freaking gosh dang it.